Welcome to today's lesson on simplest form, also known as the lowest term. In order to simplify a fraction to find its simplest form, you need to follow 3 simple steps. Let's go ahead and get started. For example, we are going to use 4/12. Alright, step 1. You need to find the greatest common factor of 4 and 12. So I'm going to write out 4 and 12, and together we are going to list their factors. The factors for 4: 1 times 4 equals 4, 2 times 2 equals 4. Those are the only numbers we can multiply together to equal 4. Alright, now let's list the factors of 12. We have 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. Alright, so together we're going to find the greatest common factor that they both have. Alright, let's look at 12. Does 4 have a factor of 12? No, it does not, so we can cross it out. How about 6? Does 4 have a factor of 6? Nope. Let's keep going. Does 4 have a factor of 4? Indeed it does. So our first step, identifying the greatest common factor between the two numbers, has been completed. Both numbers have the greatest common factor of 4. Now you're ready for step 2. Now that we've found the greatest common factor for 4 and 12, we can go ahead and start to simplify. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the greatest common factor and we are going to divide the numerator and the denominator of our fraction by that greatest common factor. So we said that the greatest common factor for 4 and 12 was 4. So we're going to divide our numerator by 4, and we're going to divide our denominator by 4. All right, 4 divided by 4 equals 1. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So that was pretty quick. Step 2, divide your numerator and your denominator by the greatest common factor. Our third and final step for finding the simplest form of 4/12 is to check our work. We need to make sure that the numerator and denominator for 1/3 have a greatest common factor of 1. If they have a greatest common factor of 1, then that means it's in simplest form. So let's list our factors for 1 and 3. 1 can only be multiplied by itself, and 3 is a prime number, which means it can only be multiplied by 1 and itself. So that means that the greatest common factor for 1 and 3 is 1. That means that 1/3 is in simplest form. We cannot break it down any further. So we have succeeded. We found that 4/12's simplest form is 1/3. Now that you have gone over the 3 steps for reducing a fraction to its simplest form, let's see if you can answer these 3 practice problems. Can you find the simplest form for 8/28, 24/3, and 16/12? Let's see what you can do. Remember, step 1, you need to find the factors for the numerator and the denominator. So let's go ahead and let's look at the number 8. The factors for 8 are 1, 2, 4, and 8. The factors for 28 are 1, 2, 4, 7, 14, and 28. Alright, so what we need to do, we need to find the greatest common factor that they both share. So let's see, does 28 have a factor of 8? No, it doesn't, so now we move on to 4. 4 is a factor of 8 and 28, and it's the greatest common factor that they both share. So now we can move to step 2. Step 2, divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. In this case, it was 4. 8 divided by 4 equals 2. 28 divided by 4 equals 7. So what we're saying is that 8/28, if we simplify it into its simplest form, it will equal 2/7. So now we move on to step number 3. We have to check our work and make sure that the greatest common factor for 2 and 7 is going to be 1. So let's see, we have 2 and we have 7. 2 and 7 are both prime numbers, which means you can only multiply them by 1 in themselves. That means that the greatest common factor for 2 and 7 is 1. So that means we successfully found the simplest form of 8/28, 2/7. Let's go ahead and try 24/3. Step 1, we need to find the greatest common factor between the numerator, 24, and the denominator, 3. Well, since 3 is a prime number, we know that the factors are going to only be 1 and the number 3 itself. So actually, if we're trying to find the greatest common factor, we know that the common factor for 24 has to either be 3 or 1. 3 is a factor of 24 because we can multiply 8 times 3. So our greatest common factor is going to be 3. So now we can actually move on to step 2. We divide our numerator and our denominator by the greatest common factor, which is 3. 24 divided by 3 equals 8. 3 divided by 3 equals 1. So the simplest form of 24/3 is 8/1, or 8 wholes. So now we can move on to step number 3. We have 8 and 1, and we need to make sure that the greatest common factor that they both share is 1. We know that the greatest common factor of 1 is itself 1, so let's look at 8. We have factors of 1, 2, 4, and 8. But 1 is the only number that they both have in common, so that means that 8/1, or 8 wholes, is in its simplest form. We cannot break it down any further. Great job so far. Let's go ahead and work on our last problem, 16/12. Step 1, we need to find the factors of 16 and 12. So we're going to write down 16 and 12. The factors of 16 are 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. The factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So now we need to find the greatest common factor that they both share. Let's see. Does 16 have a factor of 12? No. Let's go ahead and look at 6. Does 16 have a factor of 6? No, it does not, so let's keep moving. Does 16 have a factor of 4? It does, so that means that its greatest common factor is 4. So now we can go ahead and we can move on to step 2. We need to divide 16 and 12 by our greatest common factor, which is 4. So that means that 16 divided by 4 equals 4, and 12 divided by 4 equals 3. All right, step 3, check our work. We need to make sure that the greatest common factor of 4 and 3 is only going to be 1. So the factors of 4 are 1, 2, and 4. The factors of 3 are only going to be 1 and 3 since it's a prime number. So that means that the greatest common factor of 4 and 3 is the number 1. That means that we have correctly simplified 16/12 into its simplest form of 4/3. You've done a great job. Let's go ahead and review what you've learned in today's lesson. In order to simplify a number into its simplest form, you need to go through 3 steps. Step 1, you're going to take the fraction and you're going to find the common factors for the numerator and the denominator. So the factors for number 4 are 1, 2, and 4. The factors for the number 14, 1, 2, 7, and 14. So the greatest common factor that they both share is the number 2. Step 2, you're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by the greatest common factor. 4 divided by 2, 14 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. 14 divided by 2 equals 7. And finally, step 3. You need to check your work and make sure that the greatest common factor of your reduced fraction is 1. So let's list out the factors of 2 and 7. 2 and 7 are both prime numbers, which means the only factor that they are going to share is going to be the number 1. So that means that the simplest form of 4/14 is in fact 2/7.